Now, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of In the Clouds. I am very happy to be joined by the one and only Priyanka Sharma, General Manager of CNCF. How are you doing today, Priyanka?
I am great, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Please introduce yourself for the audience because I cannot do you justice. So,
Well, hello, everybody. As Chris said, I'm Priyanka Sharma, and I'm the General Manager of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which you may be familiar with if you're listening to Chris's show. We are the home for close to 100 open source projects in the infrastructure space, with Kubernetes being our flagship. I had a long career in technology and cloud native. I did regular tech stuff before, including a startup, and then I got involved with open source in cloud native. I was a project contributor to the Open Tracing project, which
cool.
was the third one to join the foundation, and that was the early days. This was it 2015? Yeah, end of 2015, early 2016. And from there, this community seriously welcomed me. Everybody I saw was so warm. They just opened their arms. And at that time, I didn't know that much about infrastructure, but I was hooked. And I spent a lot of time educating and learning about observability, particularly tracing. I worked at Lightstep at the time. Then I moved to GitLab, where I built the developer evangelism function and also got elected to serve on the CNCF governing board. At that time, I was then asked by Jim Zemlin, who runs the Linux Foundation, to come help run CNCF. And that was such a great call.
Right.
I have had such a lovely time in this community that, it's not a job, it's a calling. So that's what I do now. And in my somewhat free time, I help out startups, I advise them, and I play with my puppy, Ollie, who is a 2.5-year-old Catahoula mix who thinks he's a lapdog.
I don't know what a Catahoula mix kind of looks like, because my dog is a German Shepherd Corgi mix, so it's like an amalgam of weird things, but it's awesome. She's laying right here behind me. Bark like a German Shepherd, but size like a Corgi. It's pretty funny.
Well, Catahoula mix, the funniest thing they do is they're constantly chasing their tail. And it's hilarious. I have so many videos of Ollie just
amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I normally ask a quick intro, like icebreaker question: cake or pie? Is cheesecake a cake or a pie to you? I mean, how do you feel about cheesecake in general?
So this may be controversial, but
I like
think
controversial.
It's a pie.
I'm okay with
I
that.
think it's a pie, because here's the thing. So I actually looked up randomly the definition of cake the other day. So the Oxford Dictionary and I do not agree, because for the Oxford Dictionary, if it contains flour and oil, like it's all about the ingredients. For me, cake means there's some like bready layer, you know, and cheesecake just doesn't have that.
No. Unless you put in like a weird crust or something. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't have that in general.
It does not qualify.
I'm good with that answer. I will take that. I just think cheesecake is delicious. It's my favorite dessert. So
that's for sure. It's very
yummy. So let's talk about CNCF for a little bit, right? Like, broadly speaking, why was CNCF created, right? Like, why does it exist? A lot of people, I don't think, understand the reason behind CNCF, and it's very important, right, to its cause.
Yes, absolutely. When you look at our mission statement, it is to make cloud native computing ubiquitous, which feels slightly tautological, because you're like, well, what's cloud native?
Right.
Well, so we were formed back in 2015 because at that time Google wanted to donate the Kubernetes project to a foundation, and CNCF was formed to be the home for it. Very soon it was realized that Kubernetes is such a game changer in just how people build and operationalize their software, that there's going to be a lot of other needs to truly help, technology needs to truly help modernize software and go the container route, go the Kubernetes route. And so it started becoming home to technologies, Prometheus, Jaeger, Envoy, Containerd. I'm just giving some recommendations.
Yeah, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, it's like close to 100 names long. And so it became the home. We started attracting those projects, and all of these together became cloud native. It's cloud native because Kubernetes particularly made it easier, better to utilize cloud computing, to build with microservices. And so all of this was connected, and that was the name that was given to decomposable microservices-based, container-based architectures, cloud native. So it was very much of we defined thing. We were creating a definition. And it's one of the few times I've seen very successful category creation, definition creation.
Yeah, no, it's been an amazing journey, right? I think I got on the Kubernetes train in 2016, and it's just been a nonstop, just growing ecosystem of projects and tooling and people helping each other, right? Like I know a lot of people say, like, yes, it's a community of companies contributing kind of thing, but it's like companies are made of people, and it is a community of people that actually care about each other and care about making technology easier or more human friendly, right? Like, yes, we have a little bit of ways to go, but we're heading in that progression with every release, right? Like new features, as they get promoted, they become hopefully more consumable and, easier to use. So there's a bunch of different groups in the CNCF world, right? We have tags, we have SIGs, we have, sub projects and work groups and all these other things. Kind of like, talk about the high level groups and what they do at, like, big picture wise at CNCF, right? I know we have, security focus groups and a number of other areas, but like, what are those groups charged with? essentially.
I see what you're saying. So I would actually like to go like one level higher, if that's all right with you.
Please.
So when you look at how is CNCF structured and governed, there are actually I'm not going to share screen and ruin your. Yeah. Oh, I can. Okay, great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that's excellent. I am going to do that then. Thank you. Give me a hot second. Basically, I just want to show, in my mind, how CNCF is structured and how that's a critical piece of our success. So I'm sorry, looking around, as you know, when you
I know this, like we almost need screen sharing music and then t-shirts that say, "Can you see my screen?"
Oh gosh, let's see, CNCF overview deck. Okay. So essentially, here we go. Okay, excellent.
No problem. Take your time. It's okay.
No, this is really, I think it's going to be helpful to people. Share screen. All right. So I think this structure is really useful for people to understand because it addresses a couple of things. It also addresses what you were saying before, right? Like, oh, this is like, is it a company? It's a company open source kind of thing. When you look at the CNCF structure, at the top level are three equally valued bodies. Number one is the CNCF Governing Board. This is made up of mainly all our member companies. There's elections for various levels, and then there's platinum members. And then there's also developer representatives from Kubernetes, from other projects, TOC chair, all of that stuff. And this organization is tasked with the overall guidance and direction of CNCF. We, the executive, share our progress with the board and decide on outcomes that we want to achieve together. This governing board has a marketing committee underneath it, which is full of business folks in the industry who come together, talk about how can we spread the gospel of cloud native. Then there's the technical oversight committee, which is, in my opinion, super, super important because these are the folks who admit the projects.
Right.
So Liz Rice, as you know, is the head of the TOC right now, and she's done such an amazing job. And the whole TOC works tirelessly to keep iterating on themselves, to change their processes or as needed all the time. And a great example of that would be the sandbox process. If you think about it, first of all, it didn't exist pre-pandemic. Then we made it a thing. And over time, we kept iterating it so that now early projects who are finding their way can quickly join CNCF, and all they're provided is a neutral IP zone where companies and people can come together and collaborate safely. And that sandbox process is largely the reason why we're close to 100 projects today.
Right. Yeah.
Underneath the TOC, you have these used to be special interest groups. Now they're tags or technical advisory groups. So yeah, this is dated a little bit. And those tags are, they look at specific areas of interest. So there's tag observability, there's tag security, there's all kinds of different options. And the whole point of those subgroups is that they've been identified as important enough that they will directly work with the TOC and report to the TOC on I don't know if it's a monthly or quarterly basis on progress on their various, let's say, observability, on the various technologies and the progress they're making. These are often areas of great flux in our technology ecosystem. And so they need the TOC to be watching after them. So that all sits here. There's also not as formal working groups, which is it's much easier to spin up a working group. It's also you can have an informal versus formal. There's all kinds of flavors. So an example of that would be the CNF working group or the Cloud Native Network Functions working group. And that is really about helping the telecommunications companies adopt cloud native, keeping in mind their special needs and defining what would be a cloud native network function, which would be the key for them to utilize to go cloud native. So that's an example of a different kind of structure. So the CNF working group doesn't need to update the TOC all the time, but they can choose to request time to do an update. But it's a gathering place, and like today, like we have hundreds of people join those meetings, and they're actively working to come together with what will really work for telcos to help them.
Right.
And then finally is the end user community, which, as you see here, is at equal footing with the Technical Oversight Committee and the Governing Board. The EUC, or end user community, is full of folks who are end user members of CNCF, which means these are real users of our technologies, and they are, how do I say this? They do not sell any cloud native products or services. So these folks, they come together and they formed SIGs, which is special interest groups and user groups that focus on their real life experience with cloud native tech. And this is done in a vendor free zone, so they can comfortably get like just advice from each other. No one's selling anything. And these people and these end users, they have a seat on the DOC, they have seats on the governing board. They're sprinkled throughout to make sure we are always cognizant of who we're building for, and this doesn't become just a vendor fest.
Right.
Sorry, that was a long answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I think it's perfectly acceptable to show off that list there.
All right, I'm back.
Okay, cool. So you said like onboarding to the sandbox process is easy. And if you want to see the sandbox, we tell people to go look at the CNCF Landscape, which has become enormous since I first started looking at it, right? Like I remember when we used to print them out and hand them out to people. It's just too, like it's too fluid to just do that nowadays. So, you know, that onboarding, that sandbox process to put a project into this like safe zone where anybody can work on it and like know that it has sometimes either backing or just it's not going to be taken away from the sandbox, right? Like we know that, right? Like once it's in the CNCF ecosystem, it stays there, and that keeps like the creativity flowing, I feel like.
Yes, and to be clear, there is an archival process for projects, but I get what you're saying. It's not there is a stability to a project that is in the CNCF unless there's a formal archival process going on, which everybody would be aware of. Things are moving. This is a project that is serious for sure.
And you mentioned the archival process. You know, Red Hat acquired Core OS, and Rocket was, I think, the first thing to be archived, I believe, if memory serves me right, the container runtime. So yeah, it's not just a constantly growing thing. We do actually retire things as needed.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, it's true that it's not like every day there's a new archiving happening, but so there's more influx than there is, you know, archiving, which is fine because we need a lot of things, and that's just kind of how it is. And I mean, not only do we need a lot of things, the reality is, Chris, and I'm sure you know this better than anyone, is that cloud native, especially because of through the pandemic, has become the building block of all innovation today. It's being used everywhere. There was a keynote by Peloton at the last Kubecon Cloud Native Con EU, which they talked about how they really scaled up all their cloud native eng teams and like started deploying with Kubernetes recently. And so, and like in addition to that, what I'm seeing is all these like cool new spaces, right? And you take edge computing, you take you know, WASM, WebAssembly, you take like even AI
the whole
and
9
ML.
yards. AI, ML, the whole 9 yards. Yeah,
everyone's starting to depend on cloud native principles at the very least, and that's making our community really excited about it. And there's new innovation coming for, like, you know, there's K3S is a great example of Kubernetes for the edge, right? And so our scope is expanding as we're going because of the people who are in this ecosystem. And so that's also why our projects increase.
So yes, I mean the the onboarding process for sandbox projects, and there's sandbox, there's incubating, there's graduated, there's a governance and a flow into how you
Yes.
move from one to the next, and how do you
Yes.
enter the sandbox in general, or incubating, sometimes projects enter there, just based off of a number of criteria. I don't want to dive too deep into that in this call, but we mentioned the landscape. Can you tell me about how you would envision folks using the CNCF landscape to kind of help them and their
Yes.
organizations, right? There's so many projects now. It's kind of like, okay, the division that all the dividing lines in that landscape are very important.
Yes, that's actually a really good point you made there. I think the larger categories that we show are very key when you look at such a busy landscape. So,
Mm-hmm.
number one, remember, the landscape was created to show that there are various areas, as we discussed, right? Cloud native was beyond Kubernetes. It was about different types of technologies we needed to care about. And the landscape was a very good way of depicting that, hey, here's some players and blah. Um, Over time, of course, with the success of cloud native, it's become it's become quite unwieldy. But that's a good thing, because
Yeah.
do we want an empty landscape? Like, is that all right? You know what I mean? Like, we
No.
don't want that. When it comes to utilizing the landscape, and since you've opened the Pandora's box and allowed me to share things.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, as we were saying, Chris and I, like, here, folks who are watching, it's like you see database categories, streaming messaging,
Mm-hmm.
app definition, imagement, like all these categories, they're really important to understand. Like, these are all subgroups that this is about. And you have all kinds of platforms, serverless,
Mm-hmm.
you have many ways to utilize this landscape. You can think of this as like a, oops, sorry, went back to world clock. You can, you can think of this as like a index to
Right.
cloud native,
Yeah.
and when you think about it, an index is something that's referred. It's not something that's read. You read a book and then you refer to the index materials as you need to. And so anyone who's starting out with cloud native, I don't recommend that you go, okay, database, click,
Right. 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 Yeah.
do not, I like, just don't do it. It's probably not a good idea. It's going to overwhelm you. It's better, rather, once you have a baseline of cloud native, then let's say you're like, oh, I need to look for a good service proxy. Then you come here and then you're like, okay, these are some options. I click through and check out the solutions listed here. And the solutions listed here are not just CNCF projects, they're also vendor stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
everything's fair game over here.
Right.
And I will tell you this: the landscape is actually the top referrer for many projects and
Oh, I'm
their
sure.
website for
Yeah.
many technologies. So it's very useful to people. And I think that use case is very much, you kind of know what you want. You just want to see what are the options in that category of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're like, hey, I just want to research CNCF members. Okay, I'll just do that and like kind of look through that.
Right.
Or I'm like really into serverless today. So just get information on that. So I think the landscape, is it unwieldy? Absolutely. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a good thing, and you can use it to your advantage.
There's two things I wanted to mention there, right? Like, we have the CNCF Trail Map, which I think is
Uh-huh.
helpful to folks, right? To kind of understand why the landscape exists, is because you need to check
Absolutely.
some boxes there to kind of build out that cloud native infrastructure. But then you clicked on that members page. As an ambassador, when people come to a CNCF ambassador, we
Yes.
can talk about that in a second.
Yes.
It's that members page is where I tell people asking me, like, where can I go to work on a cloud native project as my day job,
Yes.
right? Like, I tell them,
Yes.
go to that members page on the landscape and
Those
just
folks are interested in
start
this.
applying, because they have jobs open more than likely, right? Like, I know
Yes.
Red Hat is just looking for people left and right. So,
To that point, one day I hope we're going to revamp the job board to a point that that's where you will send people.
right.
We're
Yeah,
working
yeah,
on it.
yeah.
We're working on it.
No, and it's amazing, like the ambassador program, the job board, the speakers
Yeah.
bureau, all the things you're doing to help not just technologies advance, but people advance with cloud native.
So critical.
It's great, right? Like, it is really refreshing for me, because I know, like, the second I got involved in the community, like I knew this was my place, right? Like
Yes.
this is where I
Same
belong.
here. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Where I belong.
So there's just wonderful people throughout the community, and they're all moving towards the same goal, right? Like we always have this mantra of, project over company over self kind of thing, right? Like the idea is
Yes.
to move the cloud native ball forward, not to move
Yes.
your ball forward or somebody else's ball forward.
Yes.
And it's when you sign that CLA, there is kind of an expectation that you're doing this for the greater good, right?
Absolutely. And we kind of see that, like, I know this is a community of individuals and of people over companies, because people change companies all the time and they stay in
Still
cloud
do the
native.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. They just like move like 4 or 5 places and they're still here.
Mhm.
And like, there's also like the end user virtuous cycle where like
Right.
end users will use cloud native tech, give feedback, they'll find some specific area where there's a gap, and then they'll create a technology, and then they'll donate that project. Like Backstage by Spotify is a great example.
Yes.
Right? And they've like made this whole thing, like the developer, what is it? The service
Dashboard.
catalog.
Yeah.
That's like become a category now. And
Right.
that's come from an end user who was using our tech, found a gap, created a project, donated
it.
to
Yeah.
CNCF, and now there's like companies forming around it. It's like a beautiful, just
it is truly amazing, right? Like
it's a circle of life.
yeah. To quote the Lion King, yes, as any good talk would have, is a Lion King quote. So what role do those big vendors play, right? There is different levels to that vendor kind of participation. Yeah. Like what role do the vendors play in the CNCF ecosystem?
They're super useful, right? There are many ways vendors, companies work with CNCF, right? One simple thing is membership, right? They'll become members, and they'll do that for a variety of reasons. If you are, let's say, if you're providing a Kubernetes distro of some sort, you have to get it certified, and you have to be a member to go through that process. And that certification makes sure that the Kubernetes is same everywhere, and people can truly utilize, anybody's distro and have a similar experience in terms of the base technology. So that's like one very tactical reason in which, a vendor is like making a project easier to use by providing a distro. They're becoming a member in order to go through that process, and because they get a lot of benefits out of it. We have like a whole foray of like benefits for members, which I'm sure you're aware of. Yeah. And then same members often end up contributors, like they pay for people to work on these open source projects. So it's a very multi-pronged value prop that the vendors provide. And depending on, many of them serve on the governing board as well. We have over 630 members at this point. So obviously not everyone's on the board, but there's elections and all of that. So when you think of what does a vendor provide, they provide, first of all, a market for all these cloud native technologies. They create better developer experiences. They innovate on the base technologies. And then the second they do is they provide employment to people who are working on these projects. And then the third thing they do is become members, support financially, get benefits in return, and just overall keep the system spinning.
So what would you say to somebody, and envision me like 5 years ago, and you're still GM of CNCF and everything, like, how would you suggest people get started, right? Like I suggest to people, right, like go to a meeting, sit in on it, kind of, feel your way out, or, if you're interested in networking, go work with the Kubernetes networking team, SIG, or the higher level CNCF tag. How do you recommend just anyone getting started with cloud native and contributing to cloud native infrastructures or projects, I should say?
So there's the good news is that this community is extremely welcoming, right? So you can almost kind of just like jump in and like find someone to talk to and ask them, hey, can I help out with something? And that will be enough to get you in.
Yeah.
And that's really good, because the flip side is that we're a pretty large ecosystem. It can get confusing. We all just talked about the landscape. So if I'm just kind of going to close my eyes and point to something, it's like probably not the best strategy. So I would say my answer to your question would really depend on who I'm talking to. So it's very persona based. But in general, identify your interest or business need. Let's say you are working at company X, which is an end user company, and you're utilizing 3 CNCF projects. See which ones you are using the most at work, and where, like, maybe you identify issues, etc. Then you can get involved with that project. You can easily contact them. The maintainers have, like, the names are public. And also, like, the repos are public. You can just put issue, you can just contribute an issue. Boom, that's your first contribution. And ask questions, get involved. Tactically, you could literally fix a typo when you're involved. But my number one suggestion is find a person who can guide you a little bit. Even if it's like, hey, here's how, even if someone's just replying to your issue, you're starting a relationship with them. And it's good to kind of get involved with them, learn about, hey, how can I help you? How can I achieve my goal of, let's say, making project A much easier to use at company X? And just go from there. In addition to these sort of asynchronous on your own time things, there's also the cool fun stuff around KubeCon Cloud Native Cons, which are, it seems like very much in the 90% likely that we're going to be in person in a hybrid event in Los Angeles. These are like fun times. I mean, Chris knows,
Yes. No, it's a blast. And
it's a blast.
Like, I tell my family, right, we have 2 of these a year, and they're like my Super Bowls, right? Like, that's how I explain it to my families, right? Like,
this is not Super Bowl.
But it really is for the cloud native community, right? Like, you show up for that with, you're ready to go. You've got, all your stuff polished and ready to present or talk about or whatever it is you're going to do at the conference. That is, and it grows every year. Like, and you've done Kubecon EU this year. I have to say, it was an amazing experience, right?
Thank you.
To pull that off virtually was great. And like the interaction between like having places to talk asynchronously, like in Slack, as well as in the platform, like it was just great and very well done. So huge shout out to the events team for that. And, like, I know that we're constantly evolving with this, and I know KubeCon NA will be somewhat hybridish so that folks that can't make it can participate. Yeah. And I know that's a challenge, just putting the events together, right? Like, we put on the GitOps con as a day 0 event for KubeCon EU, and just getting that together was, an achievement. Putting the whole show together, monumental amount of work, right? And having seen some of the behind the scenes work, I really do appreciate everybody in CNCF that works on that. I really do.
Thank you. That is so kind of you to say. And I agree with you that this time the event was awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to sound crazy, but it was my favorite KubeCon to date, including all the KubeCons. Seriously.
And you've been to most of them, right? Like,
I know, I have. And here's the reason why. It was, I did a lot of these happy hours, which were like anyone can join, and we like all hang out as a group, and then we break out into small groups and make new friends. That format really worked in a way that you cannot do it in person. It was like it's just an online thing only kind of thing. And I know so many, like, different levels, like a very experienced contributor meeting a brand new consumer, all kinds of like students joining in, because that was another innovation we did this time, right? Which is we really opened the door for students. So actually anyone who's new and learning, there's always going to be a student track now. And that's a good starting point, because it'll be very 101 content, but also from the perspective of someone who's not run a production system before. So of any kind. So that's kind of, I suggest people look out for that. But yeah, to go back to why this was special for me, that engagement and interaction in those breakouts got so rich and meaningful that it left me extremely warm and fuzzy, and like and I was doing these every day. I was like, and then there was like the keynotes and the chatter on the Slack, etc. The vibrance that I felt was unique.
Yes.
And so it's ironic though, right? Like we've cracked the code for virtual events, and boom, we now have to figure out something new called hybrid. So that's going to be another channel. I know, right?
Right. Yeah.
Challenge. And I ask people to bear with us. The first time we do it in NA, it'll be like a first time. And then the next one.
It's the first time for the industry, right? Often in most cases, right? Yes. So, yes. I think CNCF is doing a very good job of adapting to the times we're in.
Thank you. Yeah, we do our best.
Yeah, and you do your best, really. It is a very fine job. Shifting gears here, right? Like I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's the inclusive naming initiative that we've started. And yes. I know that's like not exactly CNCF, but it's very CNCF, right? Like at the same time, right? Like it's kind of the same,
We're part of it.
Right. We're a big part of it, and it matters, right? Like yes, I know naming 100%. Things are hard, but we have to evolve from calling things master and slave to something that is more inclusive to others, right? Like it is vitally important for our future because diverse communities make better decisions in general, right? Absolutely. Like scientific study after studies has proven that. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement and why we're trying to change some of the nomenclatures that we use?
Absolutely. So yes, inclusive naming initiative is a project where is very close to my heart. It all came about as 2020 was an interesting year. I mean, in so many ways, but particularly because the race relations in the United States were at pretty much an all-time low, I would say. Mm-hmm. And there was after in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. Mm-hmm. Many of us in the community had this collective reawakening, I should say, where we are like, hey, we have been uncomfortable with these really exclusionary terms such as master slave, whitelist, blacklist forever. It's not we're just realizing this right now.
No, it's not. It wasn't a realization.
Yes, exactly. That's just a reawakening. It was more like, why have we not done something about this? And to be clear, pockets of people were doing something way before. So I don't mean to say that we were the first people ever. No. However, I do think the thing that was different in 2020 was that suddenly the critical mass of people who wanted to make a change and just make it happen became meaningful.
Right.
And I saw that because we heard from projects all over, like Richie Hartman from Prometheus was one of the people who reached out to me, and he's like, we're doing this. We want to do this right. We'd love support and help. And then the Kubernetes community had their naming working group that was a lot of work from Stephen, Augustus, and Celeste Horgan on just making recommendations on how to change terminology. Now, you know this better than anyone. When it's software code that you're changing, it's not like words on a Word doc, right?
Right. You can't just flip the switch overnight and it's fixed,
exactly.
Right? Like it takes a couple releases. Yeah.
Yeah. They're also like, there's dependencies because words is how we connect different things, and you don't want to break those. So that's why an initiative was needed to create best practices and processes for the folks who actively want to make the change, to do it once and do it safely and securely and don't break anything,
Right.
Often there has been this argument of like, yeah, this is worthy to do, but like, hey, like it's going to be a breaking change. We all deal with breaking changes all the time.
Right, exactly.
It's not like you've never done it.
Right.
We
deal with deprecations. We deal with beta to alpha, or alpha to beta to,
exactly, like,
full grown.
Come on.
Yeah.
And so the whole point of I&I is to create the right processes, evangelize them, and have a commons gathering where anybody can come and ask a question based on the challenges they may be going through trying to do this change, like if they need resources, if they just have a question. And this group encompasses not just CNCF open source projects, but also companies such as Red Hat, IBM have played a founding role, and Cisco has done the same. There's a bunch of folks. Then a lot more are like members is the wrong word, like contributors. Let's say contributors.
Right.
And also we have looked at standards development bodies. We have lawyers. These are people actively contributing in I&I, which makes it, we hope, going to be a place which can, I don't want to say set a standard, but provide guidelines that are, more adopted by more and more people, making it a de facto standard.
Right. And there is a framework for evaluating harmful language on the I&I page.
Yes.
I'll drop the link in chat. Let me drop a link to the framework itself. I mean, this has actually helped me in my day job, like recently. So, I mean, it's very, very powerful. And the fact that we've all kind of collectively said, we're doing this, we have the capacity and the capabilities, we are doing this, right? Like, and making these changes happen. I know it will take time. I know there will be arguments, but they are worth having, right? Like, this is about people and how they feel about using a thing that we're developing actively.
Yes.
If you're uncomfortable with the way we name something, that's going to make you less likely to use the thing. Sorry, my camera just freaked out for a second. But yeah, I mean, if you walk in the door and you see, a room full of things that you don't like, you're going to turn around and walk back out,
Yeah, and it's like years ago, I'm from India, and I came here for college, and when I saw my first code base with the words master slave, I was shocked. Oh, sorry, I think my computer,
Oh, you're good.
I was like super shocked because I was like, they're still doing that? They're still saying these things? Is that allowed? And but then I was like, I'm not from here. What do I know? I should just, and no one else seems to be saying something.
Right.
So I'll just, not say anything. That was a mistake. And that was also like, just my own reaction, I realize now, is important in that it shows how someone who's not even from the US, who doesn't share the same history and background, was really turned off. It's like, what is this? How is this allowed? And so if that's my reaction, I can't even imagine what the reaction is of people who have been, who it directly targets in some ways. And so I think it's so important to be positive and inclusionary. And also to that point you made of like having a framework, because society evolves, right? Everything changes as we go along. The words that are totally normal now may become weaponized in the future. And we may want to work through that. Things that, look like genderized, things that are frankly just like ambiguous. None of that's good. So having that evaluation criteria is what's going to carry us through, I think.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I'm looking at my notes here. What do you see on the horizon that you're excited about? Like, you specifically are excited about, right? Like, there's a lot on the horizon that like anybody could be excited about, but I'm curious what you're excited about in the CNCF future, kind of looking forward thing, without revealing like anything.
Top secret.
Anything you're waiting for Kubecon NA to announce, kind of thing, right? Like that kind of stuff. Not asking you to break any kind of,
No, of course.
Rules here.
I'll tell you this. I think, sorry, I'll just drink some water. Oh, I froze, it sounds like. Okay, back on. For me, what's super exciting is waking up every day, knowing I'm at the helm of a community that is it's buzzing with activity, it's buzzing with innovation. And just knowing that CNCF, the staff, the org, we gotta like just keep up with y'all. We gotta be always evolving and like changing ourselves to be matching the needs of our community. And that gives me excitement. Why? Because that tells me there's a lot more we're gonna do. There's so much innovation that's coming from here. And I don't see that stopping. And this fact that I just shared, right? That it's become the de facto basis of innovation in the pandemic. Everyone's using cloud native for whatever they're building and whatever new they're creating. that gives me a lot of excitement, because that tells me that, but we talk about edge, we talk about AI, ML ops, we talk about security, whatever.
Yeah.
So those are just things we know now. And I'm just like super excited. Like, what will we be hearing about next year? How is this going to keep growing? And that really is the meta thing that keeps me super excited about this job. And, you go through the challenges because that's the guiding star.
Mm-hmm. It's really refreshing to see how like innovative the community is, right? Like, oh, we have a problem, or some logistical problem, and it's like, all right, let's hurt, you just get this group of people to attack it basically, and
Exactly.
to just overcome that obstacle, right? Like, it's just like, oh, there's a problem, oh, I have an idea, oh, I have another idea, okay, let's meld these two together, see if it works, right? Like, and off we go running. But then we go back and we say, this is why we did this, and so forth, so on. So we document it, there's governance, there's all the things that you would need to maintain and sustain the ecosystem.
Exactly.
It's a great framework that's already in place to do that. And I know this is kind of similar in the same vein, like, you get up every morning, you brush your teeth, whatever, you look at your calendar, but like, what keeps you going? Because this, like you said, you're constantly evolving, and I know that can be kind of tiring at times. But what keeps you going on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that so I'm the type of person who does well when given responsibility. So if I feel a responsibility to do my very best for this community, for each and every person that is part of it. And that was the whole joy of this job when Jim brought it to me, right? It's like I get to spend my waking hours, my working hours focused on making this community's life better. And so, and a lot of there's things you have to do for that. Like, as I said, like the CNCF has to constantly be evolving. And that means like our staff has to do all sorts of like stretch themselves, or like hire new people, all that kind of stuff. And that, it takes its toll on you for sure. I think, and then like, the 5 billion decisions a day kind of thing. So that's, but one is just, as I told you, like I do better when I am given responsibility, and when just the expectation is there that you're going to figure it out. That's the best place for me to exist in. So there's a temperament match. I think the other thing is that I am very blessed that I work in a remote organization with a all remote community. So as I told you, I'm working from Hawaii this week, and that's pretty awesome. And I was able to do the long weekend here, and then like my work week is like flexibly adjusted. And so I'm able to like put my live a life that is joyful because of the way we work as a community together. And like, I mean, I'm talking to you right now. I think you're Central Time.
Eastern,
is that right?
Yeah.
Eastern Time. I was just yesterday talking to somebody who was in Albania. It's like I'm talking to people in San Francisco and Canada, whatever. And so we're so distributed that helps kind of live a life that is joyful and yet filled with purpose. So that's kind of, it's that combo of the flexibility of life plus my need for responsibility that kind of like goes hand in hand. That doesn't mean there are days like when it's like, there are days you're really tired. Of course
people have days.
But the potential, the flexibility, and the responsibility, those three make it happen for me.
Nice. Awesome. So anything that you want to promote or talk about? Like, let me drop a link to Kubecon NA real quick. It's coming up in October.
Thank you.
Get your tickets, or get your virtual ticket, I guess, sometimes.
So registration is going to be open soon, like imminently. We were waiting for California, government guidelines on what's allowed. That's also going to be ever evolving. We're kind of figuring it out. But waiting for government guidelines. They came out earlier than expected because we were ready for June 14th to be the date when we hear from the government of California. But they already announced start of the month. So now we're getting the registration stuff ready, and it should be coming soon. So that's one thing. The other thing I'd like to do a plug for, if I may, is, as you all know, it's Pride Month. So yay, happy Pride.
Got
I
my
love
Red
it.
Hat Pride shirt on. Yep.
Something we're doing which is the first time something we're doing, is we have this diversity survey, which is a small micro survey. It's not that many questions,
Right.
which we're sharing with the community to tell us how, do you feel, what do you feel? Like, is this inclusive? Is this welcoming? And just kind of trying to understand what the makeup of our community is as well a little bit. So I would love to ask people, if they can, to consider filling the survey out. I'm trying to find the link for you.
I am too. I think I got it. It's a survey.
Oh, do you find
link,
it?
Right?
It's a survey monkey link. That's
Okay.
right.
I got it. Yep.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
No
so
problem.
much. You're so fast.
I've gotten good at this. I've been doing this for a year now. So I've gotten good at, someone says something. Oh, let me find the link real quick.
Thank you. Yes. So I would urge people to help us understand our community better. By filling out the CNCF diversity survey. The whole goal is to understand the community needs, how they're feeling, and keep iterating to do a better job for you.
Yeah. I mean, iteration is the kind of the key to everything we do in Cloud Native, I feel like. So 100%. Iterating on making our communities more inclusive is also something that we should be doing as well.
It's a forever journey.
Exactly. It never ends. So we have a show coming up here at noon. I want to give them time to clear the air. Anything else you want to talk about? I mean, while you're here?
No, I just want to say thank you, Team Cloud Native, for being such an amazing community of people who build bigger, better, more awesome every day. Thank you, Chris, for being an awesome member of the community.
Well, thank you.
This was a really fun experience, and you're so pro. It's pretty epic. Yeah, and so I say, hey, come contribute, come join in, reach out if you have any questions. I'm always here.
Yeah, same here, right? Like, I am a CNCF ambassador, and I'm here to help y'all navigate your way through the ecosystem. So feel free to reach out to myself, Priyanka, pretty much anyone in the community will help you out, right? Like, that's the best part. If you need help, just ask. Raise your hand.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Priyanka. It was a joy talking to you today. I really do appreciate you coming on. And we're going to have DevNation the show up next. I see Sebastian in chat saying hello. So Sebastian says hello, and we will sign off. And coming up later after DevNation the show, we have our GitUps Guide to the Galaxy. We'll be talking about another CNCF Landscape project, Argo, using RBAC with it. So yeah, thank you again, Priyanka. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Stay safe out there and enjoy Hawaii.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have fun, everyone. Bye.
Bye, y'all.